Today in Star Wars Squadrons, we're going to be talking about why nobody wants to play the B-Wing. The B-Wing was a heavily requested ship from the game developers of Star Wars Squadrons, so much so that the developers were like, fine, you can have it, it's in the game. On launch, it boasted a very unique way of playing the game, one of which being an auxiliary that allows you to use the gyro aim of the B-Wing itself so you can change the angle of your bombing runs. You want to bomb the power system upside down? Go for it. You want to change the hitbox of the B-Wing to make it harder to be hit? Well, there you go, you can. You want to run so many proton bombs that you literally become a hell to the enemy team when it comes to capital ship damage? The B-Wing can do that as well. And if you think that was enough, their standard lasers is 2 ions and 1 proton. So the firepower is just immense. So why, despite all these amazing features, is no one playing the B-Wing in Star Wars Squadrons? Well, without wasting your time, let's get into exactly that. So the stats for the B-Wings are as follows. Max hull is 1600, max shields are 400, max speed is 100, max acceleration is 50, and maneuverability is 51. Just for comparison, no other New Republic ship comes close to having the same amount of max hull as the B-Wing. The only other ship that has more hull than the B-Wing is the TIE bomber on the Empire faction, boasting 2,200 hull. But they don't have any shields whatsoever, so they fully rely on the hull, while the B-Wing does have 400 extra shield. So this ship is tanky, also has extremely strong primary and auxiliary damage, and unlike the TIE bomber and the Y-Wing, it doesn't eat for its boost reserves as fast. So you can boost at max speed for quite a prolonged amount of time, the same as an X-Wing or a TIE fighter. If you think dogfighting and jousting might be its weakness, then I've got news for you there, it's insanely strong for that. The Empire faction's TIE bomber has the highest DPS for a primary damage output. And what I mean by that is if you equip the rotary cannon on a TIE bomber, you can do 766 damage per second with that primary laser. No other ship comes close, apart from the B-Wing, which goes even further than the TIE bomber itself. Their max DPS on the heavy rotary cannon, it's the exact same as the TIE bombers at 766. However, it does a little bit more extra damage than that because its ion DPS alongside it does 283 per second. So not only are you disabling that ship, you're also doing a little bit more extra damage. But anybody that is still watching right now, you probably guessed there's a catch. And the catch is acceleration and speed. Yes, it does have horrendous maneuverability, almost making it impossible to move from side to side. However, drifting with the B-Wing solves that issue pretty well. And whilst you can boost for a prolonged amount of time, making you a pretty speedy starfighter, it's the maneuverability that hampers the ship so much. Let me give you a theoretical on this one. Whilst you can go at high speeds while boosting, if you need to turn, you have to drift. Drifting will cancel out all of that built up speed you've had, and then you need to boost in a different direction. That's where acceleration hurts you the most, because it takes too long to reach your max speed while boosting, meaning you are going to be very slow when you're turning, even if you're drifting. And hey, some of you might say to yourself, well Charlie, I can solve that issue. I can slap on agile hull and change one of the engine components. I've got bad news for you. There is no component that increases your maneuverability on the hull section, and there is only one component in the engines that increases your acceleration by a measly 10%. And the reason it's bad is because it takes 20% off your max hull, which is huge considering the B-Wing has so much hull. All that for a measly 10% on a maneuverability that's already minuscule? Mathematically, the trade-off is just not worth it. Whilst the TIE Defender does have to drift in different directions quite often because of how fast it eats through the boost, the acceleration on the ship is phenomenal, so it's always changing different directions whilst being able to get max speed very quickly, thus making the ship very hard to hit. But hey, we went into more detail on that in our previous video called The Hardest Starfighter to Play in Star Wars Squadrons. You can go and check out that cheeky video in the top right corner in the info card right now, or in the pinned comment down below if you want to check it out after this video. And whilst there is a Gyro Orcs auxiliary that you can equip to your B-Wing that can actually make it pretty hard to hit by rotating the ship manually, it's just simply too slow and very hard to use whilst you're trying to drift at the same time. Some pro players have tried to capitalize on this, so you might actually see some people pick up the B-Wing from time to time, but because the ship is already pretty huge, the rotation of the ship is just too slow to try and fake out some shots from the enemy player. This doesn't mean nobody is playing the B-Wing, of course. It is highly effective in low tier gameplay. So if you find yourself amongst the ranks of Maverick to high-end hotshot, you might find this ship insanely effective at taking out the Empire's Raider, the Artisans, and its flagship Star Destroyer. But for medium tier and high tier gameplay, no matter how fast and how maneuverable you try to be, you still make yourself a pretty easy target for equally skilled players like yourself. So you're better off just being a smaller ship like the A-Wing. It's really hard to hit. As of recording this video, the Star Wars Squadrons devs are aware of the state of the B-Wing, and whilst there might be some minor gameplay balancing in the future, they are holding back just a little bit after they made some nerfs to the A-Wing. Because who knows, it might be better that the B-Wing is best for low tier gameplay and the TIE Defender be best for high tier gameplay. Unlike all the other ships that are used across the board in terms of low to high skill, it's quite interesting to see starfighters perform differently based on whatever tier of skill they're in. But even if that wasn't the case and the developers did want to make some buffs to the B-Wing, they do need to be careful. The B-Wing is one of the most overloaded ships in terms of functionality compared to all the other starfighters. It has a strong max speed with a lot of boost, it has a ton of primary damage output, it has a ton of auxiliary damage output, and if you're good at drifting, the maneuverability issue isn't that much of a problem. You suddenly slap on a bit more acceleration onto the ship, then boom, perhaps the X-Wing just isn't good enough in terms of capital ship damage or even dogfighting, making the New Republic fighter class completely redundant. What I'm trying to say is that ship has so much in terms of functionality that even the smallest changes will have the biggest effects on it. And from a gameplay balancing aspect, it's a lot easier to take down the top of the skill ceiling with, say, the TIE Defender down a little bit compared to buffing up the B-Wing so it's used more, because we're nerfing known problems with certain starfighters, but by buffing the B-Wing, the developers could cause a problem that they're not even aware of. Personally, I really love the B-Wing. I love having all that power and just taking out ships with ease. I love the ability to rotate the ship and change your hitbox by will, and it's awesome that you don't have to have an ion-based build to take out really good TIE Defenders because it's already preloaded in every single primary laser component. And if you were going to ask me if they will change the B-Wing, I think so. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a little bit more acceleration or a completely wacky change like the ability to change the rotation of your B-Wing faster, so you can prep for unexpected bombing runs faster and make it a lot harder for players to hit you with their primary lasers. As for my opinions on the ship itself and the state it's currently in, I am sad that it's a lot harder to play that type of ship compared to all the others in the New Republic faction when playing in a high-skilled environment, mostly because the ship is just so much fun to play. I just don't think the Starfighter rewards you enough for being really good at playing that ship. Unlike the TIE Defender is where if you get really good at it, you can really feel the effects. But this is where I pass the question off to you guys. What are your opinions on the B-Wing? Do you think what I said was accurate? Perhaps I missed something out, or you might disagree with me altogether. If you want your voices to be heard, definitely let me know in the comments down below. I'll read all of your thoughts and opinions on the matter, and hey, I'll try to get back to some of you as well. And of course, one last little thing, if you want really cool stuff like the EcksToo newsletter, extra videos that'll never come out on EcksToo, or even your very own EcksToo avatar done by a professional artist, why don't you sign up to our Patreon today? It really helps our channel so we can keep pumping out awesome videos like these for you guys. But with that all said and done, guys, I have been Charlie, you've been watching EcksToo, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.